I'm Ross Deeley. I'm in my final year at Lancaster University, obviously, and my practice is materially based practice with concerns towards the climate crisis and the Anthropocene. And I use bitumen and vulcanised rubber to do this.
What are those materials?
So they're industrial materials that I'm just manipulating in different ways to try and expose their material agency.
Mm-hmm. So there's a relationship between the form and the content?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to use politically charged or materials with a certain degree of history with them. So using these materials gives me that edge with form and content to marry the two together.
Mm-hmm. And when did you start being concerned with these themes in your practice?
I think I worked a lot with video in my second year, and it was very engaging, but the lack of tactility and the lack of responsiveness, I guess, kind of led me towards thinking about specificity of materials and object making in a way that would expose their nuances. And yeah, starting third year I made this big switch.
So is there something you want the viewers to take away from the work? Is it participatory in any
It's not so much participatory, but I guess that a lot of people comment on the smell of the rubber, of the bitumen, and I guess that as long as I can use the material to tell a story about the times that we're living in and use it to illustrate the climate crisis, I think I've done a good job. And I think that by exposing its what it can do, that's all I have to do, really.
So when it comes to your sculptures, do you call them sculptures? Are they installations?
Sculpture / installation, I guess.
Is it important that they are permanent, or are they intentionally ephemeral?
There's a mix between the two. So I've done a lot of work with sheets of vulcanised rubber, which I've balanced or kind of lent against each other, and I construct them beforehand, and they do have a tendency to fall down, but if they do, it's fine, and I just kind of leave them. But a lot of my work is, I don't use nails or screws to join things together in a permanent way. I always use knots or sellotape, or using the bitumen as a glue, or things that aren't permanent in a traditional sense. So in theory it could be broken apart into more modular sections, but yeah.
So they're kind of incidental? Yeah,
they're incidental, but also they kind of, whatever happens to them, and they kind of rely on themselves in a way because they're balanced against each other, so they kind of require themselves in a really, it almost gives it a life of its own in a way, the balancing.
So would you say it's more about the process of putting them together, or is it about the final work?
I guess that's a really difficult question. I really do like having a process-driven practice, and when that's intertwined with, interesting materials, I think that really it's a nice balance between, investigation and, but I guess that it's always nice to have the final completed thing, but I think for me, process is king,
Yeah. And do you do anything to document the process?
Yeah, I take a lot of photos, but also hopefully the process is evident in the pieces. So, melting the bitumen gives it a glossy quality, and it's obvious that it's been molten at some point. So, I'm confident that the process is kind of reflected in the sculpture rather than a series of documentation. But yeah.
So it's important for the viewers to be able to tell that the materials have been manipulated.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that was something that I was kind of thinking about for a while, but as long as you have integrity to the materials and you let them do what they want to do, I think that the materiality is exposed and it's a document in itself, basically, yeah, of the process.
You speak a lot about materiality.
I do.
And why is it so integral to the work you create and doesn't come from like a philosophical inquiry?
Yeah, I think that ever since kind of coming to uni, ideas about manipulating materials or giving agency to materials is really important, and I think that you only really get that when you use non-traditional materials. So I've kind of been searching for the right materials to do it with, and I feel like I've kind of landed on that now.
And do you see yourself as part of a movement that does
Yeah,
this?
so there are a large number of artists that kind of follow the material in the way that it's kind of it's not like a response to like uber conceptual art, but it's kind of returning to this more and it goes hand in hand with philosophies like object-oriented ontology and anti-hylomorphism and stuff like that, but it's a delicate balance, and it's really just about letting the materials have agency and being able to be like the main component of the work rather than text or something else that kind of shapes the work. So it's the material's voice rather than mine, really.
I'm curious as to why you stopped painting, because you used to paint.
Yeah, I did used to paint, yeah.
At the start of the second year too, I think.
Yeah, so I came into the degree doing a lot of painting, and I continued that all through first year, and yeah, the start of second year, and I guess that I was always interested in kind of, I thought that painting is just something that artists did for a long time, and then I really wanted my paintings to have a quality to them that was almost like a video, so having like layers and layers of paint, or having this really like sequential process, but that kind of led me into video, and then video again led me into more tactile, more objects like centric making. But I think that painting definitely informs what I do now. It's just that I got a bit bored. I got a bit bored, and I wanted to, I guess, like break out of that tradition, I guess.
Yeah, because it comes with its own like limitations.
Yeah, I feel like the material hierarchy is something that I'm quite interested in, and I think that deconstructing that is important in contemporary art, because it is still really prevalent, with oil paint being like at the top, and then basically everything else kind of follows it. But it's interesting to work with these non-traditional materials and trying to deconstruct that material hierarchy.
How would you position your work within broader contemporary fine art practice?
I think that there is this kind of this group or like school of thinking to do with materiality and letting the material and or the object have its own voice. I think I just call myself an artist or like a materially driven artist, I think. And I guess that for me that is manipulating a specific material in so many different ways that you kind of build this vocabulary of materials. Yeah.